So there's Dragon Mountain in the background. I am basically sitting where Camp Enari used to be, halfway between Dragon Mountain and Camp Enari. Camp Enari is the military base where my father was stationed in 1967, 1968. I came here to spread his ashes and read some of these stories, though I'm not going to read all of the stories, but today I'm going to read a little bit about from the end of his tour and a little bit from before he started flying as a scout, while he was still flying slicks, which is to say slicks are, well, he explains it, so I don't have to. But at any rate, that's Dragon Mountain. And this is where my father was stationed back in 1967 and 1968. And welcome to his spot. I'm actually on this, you see this beautiful little fenced area. This is a shrine right here. I don't think this shrine was here when my father was here, but maybe it was. Who knows? And up the top is a really nice shrine. And it was cool when I first got here. I kind of spent a couple hours just hanging out in there, talking to a few, well, trying to talk to a few Vietnamese people, and also just being quiet, and did a little crying, just kind of being like, holy shit, I'm here. And I guess it really just came down to wanting to see it. I just wanted to, you know, I'm reading all these things and I just wanted to see it. I just wanted to be in the spot. And, you know, you get here and you don't know exactly why you're doing what you're doing. You don't know exactly what the fuck is going on. You're just like, why am I reading this stuff? But, and a lot of people are talking about, you know, oh, you know, your love for your father and your dedication to your father. And that's true. That's definitely true. But it's more an anger at his having had PTSD the entire time he raised me, reading the lines like, I never came home from Vietnam. Well, if he's never fucking come home from Vietnam, that means he's been here this whole time while he was raising my brother and I, while he was married to my mom, while he was doing all these wonderful things. A piece of him felt like he never came home, but not in a good way, right? Not like, oh, I left a piece of my heart in Italy. No, not like that. So anyway, you know, what the fuck am I doing? What I'm doing is I'm trying to raise awareness for other people to understand what the fuck these guys went through. And now, you know, what these women go through. It's not just PTSD is, first of all, soldier PTSD is by no means a male thing, right? It just so happens that my father was a helicopter pilot, so all the people I know are these old helicopter pilots from Vietnam. So at any rate, flying the Cobra. Or do I just keep talking about this issue? Is someone watching me? Someone is watching. Interesting. You're in the middle. I figured nobody was watching, so I could just turn this thing off and like erase it. But there is somebody watching. So this story is from the the end of my father's tour in Vietnam. It's when he jumped in to the Cobra. The Cobra was new, and it changed the tactics. And it was a little bit about that transition. So here's a story from the end of my tour. We were operating, and it's from the front seat of the Cobra. Since we're talking, Here's that story from the end of my tour. We were operating west of Bun Het, I think. It was one of the last combat missions I flew in Vietnam. I was an experienced combat pilot, having flown slicks, scouts, and guns, but because the Cobra was so new in country and there was no Cobra school established yet in Vietnam, our new Cobras came to us with fresh new pilots right out of flight school. I was flying front seat with a brand new, fresh in country, wet behind the ears Cobra pilot. He was aircraft commander, but it was the job of the experienced guy in front to train the Cobra guys on how this all went down. I'll call him my backseater. And at this particular moment, he was flying way too low and out of position to effectively cover our scouts if they suddenly took fire. It was getting dark, and we were all about to head to corral when the lead scout suddenly came upon a fresh bunker complex and hastily put out cook fires. Within seconds, the scouts saw Northern Vietnamese equipment scattered about. It didn't take being a seasoned scout pilot to know they had just come upon a hornet's nest, and the shit was about to hit the fan. But my Cobra pilot was still too new to get it. I told the backseater to pay attention to the radio transmissions from the scouts. The little birds he was there to protect were undoubtedly hovering over hidden Northern Vietnamese, and it was going to get very ugly very quickly. The scouts were trying to make the enemy reveal themselves, which meant drawing fire on themselves, and the gun cover had to be properly positioned to cover them when the enemy opened up. The scouts below us knew how this worked, and I knew it, but the new Cobra guy in back was just beginning to understand this. Experienced scout and gun pilots could always tell when the shit was about to hit the fan. Experienced gun pilots could tell by the transmissions of the scouts and by the way things were unfolding exactly where they should be, and our seasoned gun teams were very good at being in the right position at the exact right moment to react. When a scout suddenly screams, "Taking fire," an experienced gun pilot is already rolling in, laying mini gunfire under the lead scout, giving the scouts the needed seconds to get the fuck out. I told my new backseater that he was in no position to cover his scouts if they took fire at this instant. I told him to climb to a good altitude for the Cobra to engage, which was still unknown to all of us. Flying the Cobra was new, so where that was exactly was still unknown to all of us. And to talk his wingman into position in his orbit so that when it happens, one of them can roll in on the target. Guns a-blazing. Without a door gunner, the only recourse for the Cobra was to have the front seater holding his sight out to his side and keeping a constant vigilance by training his crosshairs just under the hovering scout. And sure enough, just as my backseater managed to get his wingman in the proper position, the Northern Vietnamese opened fire on our scouts, and I immediately opened up with the chunker yelling on the intercom, "Roll in on the smoke." The backseater rolled in just as he should. Nice job, backseater. As our scouts hightailed away, the area marked by the observer's smoke grenade was suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree. Chunker rounds were exploding in a concentrated area right on top of the smoke, and combined with rockets salvaged from our wing stores, we were ruining somebody's day. On our break, we began to take heavy fire, including tracers which arched towards us and passed way too close for comfort. Since usually we only saw muzzle flashes indicating hostile fire, these tracers were far more terrifying than usual, as it was almost dark and it meant there was a heavy gun down there. "Turn off your lights," I yelled. As the backseater quickly turned off all exterior lights, I could see our wingman rolling in, just as he should, to cover our break. As we turned away, his mini gun run raking effectively ended. His mini gun run raking effectively ended the tracers lacing our way, and we felt far less in danger of being hit. He could have written that a little bit better. That didn't flow really nicely for me. So we were in far less danger of being hit. Without exterior lights, in an almost dark situation, we no longer made a very visible target. We finished our climb for a second run, and we were about to roll in when suddenly we lost all electrical power. Everything went black, the weapons ceased firing, the intercom and radios, every instrument went dark. Not a very good situation to be in as night is falling. The engine was still running, but nothing responded to anything I did up front. I turned around and yelled to the backseater, "Can you still fly this thing?" He was pulling his flashlight out and indicated that he could, but he had no SAS, stabilization augmentation system. And the aircraft began wallowing around almost out of control. A Cobra without SAS is a very difficult aircraft to fly, and I believe the side-mounted flight controls, located on either side of my seat, were rendered useless as they were fly-by-wire. My new guy in the back was the only person who could fly this thing now. Unknown to us, the other aircraft on that mission continued to engage the enemy positions, thinking we had been shot down. They reported us as missing and presumed crashed somewhere. They had no idea what happened to us. To them, we simply disappeared. The end of the story is that my new Cobra guy was able to fly us back to our fire base and make a night landing without a landing light. Nice job, newbie. The other crews were, of course, quite happy and relieved to find us drinking a needed Budweiser in our makeshift officer's tent on their return. We looked over the entire airframe after we landed and we could not find a single bullet hole, but we experienced a complete electrical failure, which to this day, I have no clue why. Beginning of my tour. So he jumps from the end of his tour to the beginning of his tour. My job when we first arrived in Vietnam was flying slicks. It became evident as time went on that my assignment as a slick pilot was going to be a piece of cake in our unit, at least as far as contact with the enemy was concerned. As we developed and honed our tactics in Vietnam, the way we did our job became pretty much a cat and mouse game between our scouts and individual enemy soldiers. 90% of the time, the enemy were North Vietnamese regulars coming into country from the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which stretched from North Vietnam through Laos and south into Cambodia. As slick drivers, our job was mostly stand by and wait. Our scouts and guns would be assigned an area of operation for the day, usually an area of known enemy activity and movement. While they went off looking to mix it up with the enemy, the 6 slicks carrying our 28 indigenous troopers, the Blues, would position to a designated location, usually a field somewhere near a fire base or an established airfield in one of the towns close to our OA, and we would wait to be called. I can say we were called often, and often there would be a hot LZ into which we had to land, landing zone. But by the time we got to any area where the enemy had been active, between our scouts and gunships and the artillery or airstrikes they had called in, things would be pretty tamed. Our scouts and guns really cared about where they would ask us to land our troops, and a lot of effort would go into making every LZ as secure as possible. It seemed to me our most challenging job was simply flying the aircraft safely. The LZs were hazardous, small, on mountain peaks, holes in jungles, at high altitude with no wind and high temperatures, highly challenging conditions in any environment. Slick flying was difficult and dangerous flying. Tight formation flying was the norm, and our aircraft were often taxed beyond our design capacity and or capability. Taking ground fire only made an already dangerous situation more dangerous. We did troop insertions, troop extractions, resupply missions, medevac missions, aircraft recovery, but in the time I spent as a slick pilot on actual combat missions, I think I only took 1 round in my aircraft. During that same time, however, we all began to realize that as a unit, our mission was truly a unique one. From day one, our scouts took losses. The idea came that for our scouts to do the job of making contact with the enemy and engaging him in this kind of war, we needed to develop a new way. Our new way would prove extremely effective, and the scouts would inflict significant losses on the enemy, but we would learn it would come at a high cost to the scouts. By the end of January 1968, I had decided to leave the Blue Team and I volunteered for the Scouts. It was decided early on that because of the extreme hazards of this kind of operation, no pilot or observer would ever be assigned to the Scouts. The losses were just too high. To fly Scouts, you had to volunteer. Before I take you into my time as a Scout, here are a couple of stories from early in my combat tour as a slick pilot. So I'm going to stop here on this video. The next video I'm going to do, things start to get a little more intense. He's still a slick pilot, but this is actually, he got called to do a strange sort of trip. There's Dragon Mountain. Whee! Oh, right there. Dragon Mountain. And that is where, this is where Camp Enari used to be. It's now a coffee plantation. The pad, the concrete pad is still there. I'm going to videotape that later. At any rate, the next video is going to be an interrogation. This one's a lot harder to read and it's a lot more intense. Everything so far has been pretty low-key, and I hope you join me for that one. Follow me, please, if you're interested in this journey with my father's memoirs, Rosie and Me. My name is AJ Miller, and I am the daughter of Wayne C. Miller, a Vietnam War vet who passed away in 2016 from leukemia, from acute myeloid, acute myeloid leukemia. And I'm following his memoirs all the way to Vietnam, and I'm having a great time. So follow along. Thank you for being here. Peace.